Welcome back to the K-News Morning Show, 7:23 on your Thursday. I'm Mike Mozingo. Joining me live in studio, Stephen Kent. He is the media director of the Consumer Choice Center, co-host of News Nation's Rising on Hill TV, also the author of How the Force Can Fix the World. He's also going to be hosting a couple panels over at Freedom Fest this week. Stephen, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well. You woke me up with that bleeded out here. I'm still operating on East Coast time, and I woke up at 4 a.m. and just couldn't go back to sleep.
Oh, it's a story of my life these days. The alarm goes off at 20 after 4 and the day begins.
You bet.
The life of a morning show host. So, a big Linkin Park fan. I like to play music that the guests are into, and that was a Stephen Kent request there.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember I did Fox in DC, and they also asked me if I wanted a walkout song, and so I asked for Numb Encore. So Jay-Z, Linkin Park. We're just going to keep it going.
So, tell me about the Consumer Choice Center. What's the mission of the Consumer Choice Center? How does the Consumer Choice Center, or CCC, as I might refer to them throughout this interview, how do they try to affect change here in this country?
Yeah, so the Consumer Choice Center, we are an international consumer advocacy group.
It's beyond this country.
Yeah,
it's all over. All right.
I mean, most of my colleagues are based in Europe and Dubai. I've got folks in Asia and also in Brazil. And so we look at consumers as an interest group around the world, people who buy things, enjoy products, want access to new and exciting goods and technology, and we advocate for their interests. And so that takes a lot of different forms on different continents, given, whatever any government on any side of the world is doing. But we're often always advocating for more access, lower taxes, and less regulation that keeps people from enjoying the products they love.
So what are some of the victories that the CCC has achieved?
Oh, man. I don't have my victory sheet in front of me, but we have worked on sports betting legislation.
I saw that on your website.
Yeah, we've worked on sports betting legislation and made positive gains in different state houses across the U.S.
The idea being that people should be free to bet their money if they want to.
More access to sports betting in a safe, regulated market that protects people from overseas sites that really do prey on the American consumer and try to get them to ring up credit card debt. So a safe and regulated market is better than no market at all. We also work on alcohol policy here in the U.S. and in Canada. So there has been a huge push in Canada to crack down on the amount of recommended drinks that people can have per day and still be considered healthy and safe. And that trend has also come to the United States. So a neo-prohibitionist wave has made its way here. And we are trying really hard every day to make sure that RFK and the Trump administration are actually following the best and most reliable science on health when it comes to alcohol policy.
I actually saw something on your website last night when I was snooping around that during the Biden administration there was a study that was released that basically said, look, the 2 drinks a day, that's still way too much. Like alcohol causes this, that, and the other thing. And I read on the website that was actually based on flawed science. So is that kind of the pushback you guys are making?
Were adopting the World Health Organization's position that no amount is safe when it comes to alcohol. They are ginning up a cancer scare risk when it comes to alcohol products by saying that there is a significant cancer risk associated with drinking. Now, what they will always say is that there's this percentage risk added every time that you have a drink. We are talking about like 100th of a single percent. We are talking about 0.0099%. It is insignificant. And they also will say in their studies that the cancer risk is associated with binge drinking. And so they are trying to get a labeling regime going on in the U.S. where there will be cancer warning labels on alcohol to try and deter people from drinking, even though moderate drinking, there is little to no significant cancer risk or health risk associated with healthy, moderate drinking. 2 drinks a day, 1 drink a day for women.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, when I saw that study come out, I myself do enjoy the occasional snifter of brandy. And I saw that and I went, oh, well, that's not good news for folks like me, but I'm glad to hear that maybe it was based on some pseudoscience there, or just very, very, very small numbers.
Yeah, very much. I would call it pseudoscience, and we're working every day to make sure that the Trump administration is following the right stuff here.
So health policy is also a focus of the CCC. RFK, now the head of HHS. Personally, I like the Maha message. I'd like to see the crap and the processed stuff and the non-natural things removed from our food supply. Where does the CCC fall on the Maha mission?
Yeah, so the Maha mission is a little complicated. I would say that RFK is an exciting change agent who is actually coming in to not go by the rule book, to actually challenge industry at every turn and make sure that our health agencies in the government are not captured by special interests. I think that's a really, really important mission. There's a lot of different things that he's going after, from vaccine efficacy to the FDA processes and the approval processes for new drugs. There's the stuff like the food dyes. And so I agree on some stuff, disagree on some others. You know, one area where I think RFK and the CCC are definitely aligned is that we want the FDA to be more effective. We want them to streamline the approval processes for drugs that patients need access to. There are people with all sorts of illnesses across this country, something RFK talks about often, who need access to different medicines and treatments that are coming on. The U.S. is like the place in the world to go for experimental treatments. People come in from all around the world here to tap into our powerful pharmaceutical market. And so he's skeptical of the pharmaceutical industry. Mm-hmm. And I think that's completely fair. But we want to make sure that the FDA can still do their job. Since he's been in his role at HHS, 3,500 people have either been fired or left FDA as part of DOGE, and then just people, you know, getting out of Dodge as quick as possible. And that is going to hugely impact the amount of people who can actually review products coming to market, and so that medical technologies can't get fully approved. I was just at a conference last week in DC, and someone was showing this amazing ultrasound technology that is AI powered and allows us to see like the full inside of a person and really see what's going on inside of them with this new tech. But they're going to really struggle with FDA approval processes as the amount of people are leaving that agency or being laid off.
So you're saying that the folks that have been laid off, maybe doged, if you want to use that as a verb, that they're not necessarily extraneous, and it's not just that, well, you know, we're cutting the fat, we've got too many people sitting around not doing a whole lot? Or is there a little bit of that? Maybe they cut a little too much. I know that was a concern. It's like, well, if you cut too far, you can rehire, and there's kind of this back and forth. I mean, are some of the cuts legit in the CCC's eyes, or is it kind of a mixed bag?
I am never going to argue against cuts. I think cuts are always something that should be considered and go after. But what's gone on at HHS and the FDA has been a little dramatic, and it can actually run the risk of walking and slowing down some of the things that the Trump administration would actually like to do. I mean, the Trump administration is not against the pharmaceutical industry and trying to make sure that we have a successful medical market that the whole world looks to. But there are consequences to losing 3,500 people in such a short span of time. I mean, a lot of the medical technology companies in the U.S. and the pharmaceutical industry, like they have like case officers within the FDA who are managing their application and their approval for their different drugs that they're developing. Drug development can take a decade worth of time. And if you lose the person who is managing your approval case, they just disappear, they get doged, you have like no recourse. You don't even know where you are in the process. This is a little bit of a problem. So again, I like that RFK is a guy who's willing just to go and shake things up and flip the table over. You got to do that every so often, but there's always the risk of overdoing it.
The removal of 17 members of a committee that crafts vaccine policy. Now, RFK Jr. claiming that the group was plagued with persistent conflicts of interest. They basically acted as a rubber stamp for vaccine approvals, also alleging that some members had financial ties to the pharmaceutical companies. Does he have a point? What does the CCC say when it comes to RFK and the removal of these 17 advisors?
You know, it's within his purview. That is within his power to do that. I'm not a political advisor. I know that he's going to have to contend with all the congressmen that he told that he was not going to be kind of messing with the vaccine processes in America. And this is not something that is top of my list in terms of main priorities. This is within his purview to do. I think our just concerns would just be like, who is he going to replace these individuals within the vaccine board, and what is their background going to be? There is this reality of Washington, D.C. and the regulatory agencies where a lot of industry people do end up working within government agencies. This is something that RFK's team talks about a lot when it comes to the food industry. It absolutely exists in pharmaceuticals and vaccines. And you want to make sure that there are not people in there who are monetizing their approval processes of vaccines, and that they are serving as a rubber stamp for the industry that they used to work for. That's a real thing that you have to be on the lookout for. So I'm not going to critique him on that. You just have to be mindful of like who's coming in next and why did all of these people have to go? And are the people coming in just going to be political
flunkies? Because there is a real risk with Maha and RFK. We've seen a lot of political loyalty and litmus tests going on within Maha and the Trump administration. You want to make sure that these people are looking out for consumers and patients and not just doing what RFK wants them to do, because he's not going to be there forever.
Yeah, is the worry that maybe he might fill the panel with similar skeptics that might, whereas one half that used to be there, or the 17 that used to be there, may have been a rubber stamp, whereas these folks may just be a roadblock, where it's no across the board all the time.
I mean, maybe, I guess there's always the potential of stacking it with people who are just from his orbit and are vaccine skeptics, but I think his perception is that being skeptical is kind of the job. Like his perception is that being skeptical of every product, everything that might be injected into a young child, that you're supposed to be skeptical of these things. And I'm sympathetic to that.
Yeah,
I think that you should always be skeptical. And I think his perception was that the approval rate for the APIC before was just way too high, that they were clearly just kind of moving too quickly to approve most things that came through. And so we're going to now see the other side of the coin, which is, do we get too much skepticism to the point where the process is so slow and cumbersome that we're actually leaving a lot of value on the table in terms of medical innovation?
Okay. Yeah, fair point.
Balance.
Always trying to find balance in the force and otherwise.
Of course.
But we'll get to that in a minute. So just changing over to marijuana policy federally. Here in California, marijuana is legal. It is recreationally available to anybody who is of age. But federally, it's a Schedule I drug. What exactly does that mean, and why do you see that as problematic?
A Schedule I drug struggles to benefit from medical research at the federal level. So labs cannot work on different synthesizing processes with marijuana. You cannot actually study it and figure out how it can be applied in different ways in different sorts of trades. It basically is just treated the same as heroin or methamphetamine, just really, really hard drugs that we know from our lived experiences in the world, from knowing people who have struggled with drug addiction and substance abuse, that marijuana and heroin are nothing alike.
Very different, yeah.
They are nothing alike. And so the idea is to get it rescheduled from Schedule I to Schedule III, which would actually allow that sort of research to happen. It would also allow like banks and stuff to work with medical marijuana dispensaries and businesses to provide financing, investment. I mean, right now, a lot of marijuana businesses, they have to deal in cash.
It's cash only,
In Washington, D.C., they've been doing this crazy thing where you go to a dispensary and they can't say that they are selling you marijuana. They have to give you a painting, and they literally give you something else,
and then you trade it for weed,
and the marijuana is with it, and it's like the marijuana is a gift, but you paid for the painting.
Yeah,
it's very, very silly, and this kind of law makes federal regulation seem ridiculous. It makes it seem like it's not a real system, like we are just setting up barriers for consumers and patients who use medical marijuana just for fun, just to see how complicated we can make it. And the Trump administration, or at least Trump the candidate, in September of last year when he was running for president,
he pledged that he was going to do this, that he was going to reschedule marijuana, and that he was going to make it more available for the people who need it. But he hasn't done that, and there's a lot of real skepticism that he is actually not going to fulfill that promise, and maybe that he lied to younger voters on this issue.
Yeah, in the lead up to the election, I was saying, I wasn't necessarily talking about changing it from Schedule I to III, but just saying that whichever candidate just latched onto legalization would probably get a groundswell of support.
Yeah.
It could have been Biden or Kamala Harris, as it ended up being, or it could have been Donald Trump, and I really didn't see either side really reach for it. It kind of got touched on in the Harris campaign, but it didn't seem like anybody really wanted to pull the trigger on full legalization. But the moving from Schedule I to III, that's not full legalization.
That's right. Yeah. All that does is it clarifies certain things about the tax code, criminal enforcement, banking and investment, and medical research, which is very valid. I mean, there's a lot of conversation out there about how potent marijuana has become, and that, you know, the marijuana that you might buy on the street right now or at a dispensary right now is not what your dad or your grandpa was smoking. It's really, really different. That's a valid concern. But one of the things that medical marijuana patients would actually benefit a lot from is dispensaries and marijuana-based companies being able to calibrate, study, research, and fine-tune their products so that they can get the amounts just right for people's different needs. Like, you don't need to get super, super stoned if you're just dealing with some arthritis, versus if you're dealing with cancer, in which case, like, that might actually be really helpful for your pain and your discomfort levels. The rescheduling is just part of this. It's not legalization. And I think for everybody out there who really does not want to see marijuana on every street corner, rescheduling is not legalization. It is not saying that there's going to be a dispensary by the kindergarten. That's not what happens here. All it does is we say, we know now marijuana is not on the same caliber as heroin and other hard drugs.
So, detractors might say that this is just a stepping stone to full legalization. You know, it's kind of like what happened in California here. It was legalized medically, and then getting a medical marijuana card in this state basically became a joke. There were doctors who quit their practices so they could wander Venice Beach and sell you a card for $300. And that was the loophole. Everybody could get weed, whatever they wanted. It was no big deal. Now we have full legalization in California, which I actually support. I haven't necessarily seen a lot of the problems that legalization opponents like to bring up. I mean, aside from there are certain towns here in the Coachella Valley that maybe as soon as you drive over their border, you just smell marijuana, which that I think is annoying to the residents of that particular city. But
88% of Americans at this point agree that it is time to stop treating people who use marijuana like criminals. Like, that is something that has gotten to be relatively universal across political lines. There's some disagreements about, you know, how much people want access to recreational versus medical product, and states are going to figure that out. I think every state is going to have their own culture and work on that. But this issue, just on the polling, has gotten to be an 88% issue. That 12% holdout who think that people who smoke or buy or sell marijuana need to be behind bars, they are just such a strong minority at this point.
I say, are we living under the tyranny of the minority? 12% of people?
It's the American way.
Well, you know, you might be right there. We do have to take a quick break. We'll pick this up right afterwards. We're talking with Stephen Kent, Media Director of the Consumer Choice Center. He's going to be hosting some panels.